Welcome to the Magnify Your Miracles podcast. Get ready to be inspired, uplifted, and connected to the miraculous energy of unconditional love that I call Mother Mary. If you're a highly sensitive, highly creative entrepreneur or light worker, and you want to magnify your impact and your intuition, you are in the right place. I'm your host, Reverend Frances Faden, interfaith minister, intuitive coach, and author of Meditation is Friendship with God. I can't wait to share miraculous stories, books, meditations, messages, and interviews with other miraculous light workers just like you. Are you ready to magnify your miracles? What are we waiting for? Let's get started. Hello, my miraculous friend, and welcome to another episode of the Magnify Your Miracles podcast. This is Reverend Frances Faden, and I am so grateful to get to spend this time with you, helping you to magnify your miracles. And boy, do I have a book to share with you today that will help you do exactly that in such a profound way. But before we get into today's book review, I want to just take a few deep breaths together like we always do. Breathing in the energy of expansion and breathing out anything you no longer need. And if you are driving, please keep your eyes on the road, but you can still bring your awareness to your breath. And as you give yourself permission just to bring body, mind, and spirit together in this moment, the awareness of body, mind, and spirit together in this moment, you start to feel that energy. I start to feel that energy, that divine presence supporting me, flowing through me, as me, all around me. It is that energy of unconditional love and everything that brings, the most powerful energy in the universe. Knowing that today we're going to be talking about something that's going to help to magnify that energy for you, help you expand your sense of who you are and your understanding, even the understanding of the divine presence. Let's take one more deep breath together in gratitude, and we can begin. All right, my friend. Well, I am so excited. And if I'm perfectly honest, a little nervous to be doing this book review. This is a book from my teacher, Acharya Shunya. And next week, you're going to get the opportunity to hear her directly. She agreed to do an interview with me, which I'm so excited to share with you. She's such a powerful presence and such an embodiment, especially of this book. And this book is called Roar Like a Goddess, Everywoman's Guide to Becoming Unapologetically Powerful, Prosperous, and Peaceful. As soon as I heard that title, I was like, oh, that's the book for me. Now, I am recording this review in the month of August of 2022. It is going to be coming out at the end of August. And this book is actually going to be released on September 6th. So when this comes out, I highly encourage you to, wherever you get your books, to pre-order this book. Pre-order it and get it. Make sure you're going to have it. Mine is pre-ordered and waiting for me. It'll be delivered actually on the 6th. So I'm going to be sharing with you today from the pre-release PDF that I was given of this book. So my pages might not exactly match your pages if you get this book. And I'm also, reading it on my Kindle. And so you might have to be a little patient with me as I'm finding the pages that I want to share with you. But what a blessing. What a blessing. First of all, to be able to read this book before it's out in the world, and also to be able to share it with you, and then to be doubly blessed by being able to spend time with the author, Acharya Shunya, next week in our episode. Please tune into that, where she actually goes into depth, tells her story, and even shows you a beautiful daily practice that you can do to get in touch with and discover your own inner goddess power. But again, coming back to this book, Every Woman's Guide, Roar Like a Goddess, Every Woman's Guide to Becoming Unapologetically, that's the word that stands out for me, unapologetically powerful, prosperous, and peaceful. And those are words that are often very difficult for women to embrace. So when I asked Acharya Shunya, the concept of roaring, if you're at all familiar with the Indian tradition, you will see that they have many, many, many depictions of the divine. And people think it's a polytheistic religion or a polytheistic country, and it's not. They believe in the one spirit and the infinite expressions of that one spirit. And there's the main energies, the three masculine, and then the three feminine energies that are the ones that we can connect with externally, but more importantly, can discover within ourselves internally. And it's so fascinating to me. My whole world changed when I started studying yoga and the Vedic tradition and realizing that in that tradition, power is a feminine quality. And even when I say that to people now, they scratch their head. They're like, huh? What? Power is a feminine quality. So you have these beautiful masculine energies. We have Brahma and Vishnu and Shiva, but without Saraswati and Lakshmi and Durga, they have no energy. And so we have the beautiful Shiva, who I love. We see him with his blue skin and his matted hair, and he's got cobras all around him. And I always think of him as he's the one that kind of scoops up everybody else that doesn't quite fit into. It's like all the parts of ourselves that we think are not worthy or not lovable. And under that amazing energy of Shiva, everything is one. That's my understanding. I am not a Vedic scholar, but whenever I relate to Shiva, that's what I think of. I personally find that the Christ energy it feels like another manifestation of the Shiva consciousness. I could be wrong, but that's what it feels like to me. And so I was blown away when someone said to me, when we were talking about the energy of Durga, goddess Durga is his power. I was like, what? Without Durga, without the feminine, the masculine is only potential. It's potential. It's consciousness, but it's not actualized. It's not able to be manifest. So that's something that we all can really meditate on and think about. And I have to say that in this book, Acharya Shunya has done an amazing, amazing job of really helping women. And when she says women, she doesn't just mean women who were biologically born women, anyone who is identifying with feminine energy. She is the only Vedic teacher that I'm aware of that embraces people of all genders. Because as you know, the Indian culture and most cultures in the world are still very patriarchal. And so the fact that she doesn't just take a stand for women, but she takes a stand for feminine energy, no matter who wants to claim it, to me is extraordinary. It's an extraordinary energy. So I'm going to read a little bit of this book to you so you can get a feeling for Acharya Shunya and what she's bringing to this topic. If you're like me, you've probably read many, many books about the divine feminine and many, many books about women and women's rights and all of that, many different systems. But it's so rare to hear it from the mouth of a woman, not being told by a male scholar, a male yogi with very good intentions who hasn't lived it. And she has lived it. She, born in India, came to the United States, I'm going to say 20 years ago, maybe 25 years. I'm not getting that right, so don't quote me on that. But I'm so grateful because she really embodies the East and the West energy. So she's taken these beautiful, powerful goddesses and these beautiful, powerful stories that her mother shared with her when she was a little girl. And she's brought these energies into current time. So we're not only reading stories from 2, 3, 4, 5,000 years ago in a culture that many of us in the West can't relate to. She's bringing them right here and talking about us, whether, as I said, woman, trans woman, like whatever you are, however you identify with the feminine energy. And she's bringing it into day-to-day things that you and I struggle with, challenges that we have. It's amazing to me. And it's from her own life experience and her own journey of awakening these energies within herself. And just so I put this out there, her first name is not Acharya. That's actually a title. To just say it briefly, it means teacher. So it's a title that somebody is, it means that she's reached a certain level in her own awareness of these teachings, that she can be called that energy. And so as a teacher, in my opinion, she's one of the best teachers I've really come across in how she explains things. And so this is what she has to say about patriarchy and how we are in this energy. And she says to roar means to have the courage to express your authentic voice. It's not about yelling, although sometimes you can. It's not about anger, although anger, righteous anger, is absolutely called for and welcome, especially when there's any type of violation or abuse that's been happening. But she's calling on all of us, every woman, every female energy here on the planet, to roar, to own your own authentic voice. So this is what she says about the patriarchy. This is in the prologue. Patriarchy is a system of beliefs that put men first. It promotes a society dominated by men, sexually, emotionally, economically, religiously, and of course, politically. Patriarchy is not simply a phenomenon that invades individual minds, specific families, or isolated feudal cultures. It is a ubiquitous, insidious social disease, difficult for most women to ignore and still harder to uproot because patriarchal beliefs morph, adapt, and reappear in every era and every society, ancient or modern. So true. In a climate of patriarchy, the most difficult leap a woman will ever take is to trust her true voice, the one I compared to her roar. Despite the difficulty, it is time for all women to discover who they really are, to claim their true status in the human jungle and roar with their innate lioness-like power. I love that. So I'm just going to read this one part again because it's so powerful. The most difficult leap a woman will ever take is to trust her true voice. Whew, I don't know about you, my friend, but I'm like, oh, preach it, sister, because that has been my experience. She goes on to say, through spiritual knowledge that awakens and liberates us from stereotypical scripts, women can begin trusting themselves and learn to roar against the facades of conformity and other self-diminishing habits they've become accustomed to over time. As simply being human is not yet enough for women to feel safe and celebrated on our planet, it is time for women worldwide to look inward and roar with bold, goddess-like self-recognition. If you're feeling skeptical about or unfamiliar with the concept of roaring like a goddess, it may be due to the way that the term goddess has been defined to you, perhaps as some angelic entity in a faraway land. Let me reassure you that the goddess I am referring to is the same as your higher self. She is not far away geographically, but near you. She is you. This goddess represents wholeness and alignment with your hidden spiritual self and its power and true potential. And then she goes on to describe, I grew up in the Hindu culture, worshiping divine feminine as multiple goddesses, all representing different facets of the one supreme goddess known as Shakti. What began as devotion to a divine entity situated somewhere far beyond me has culminated into a deeply affirmative friendship with the goddess who dwells very close to me, in fact, right inside my heart as my own self. This single recognition that the goddess is none other than my own higher self helped me experience empowerment in my different roles as a teacher, daughter, mother, wife, and conscious citizen of our planet. I am not simply a devotee anxiously waiting to be redeemed by goddess grace, but rather a roaring goddess woman herself who has found her true voice and who could actively help herself by exploring and unearthing latent goddess attitudes and strengths from within. That is why throughout this book, I will keep gently reminding you that while you can certainly access divine grace by connecting to a goddess outside you, it is also important to recognize the goddess powers lying latent within you. Your true self is a direct portal to the goddess dimension of this universe. This means you're not limited to seeking aid from an otherworldly feminine divinity. You can unearth goddess-like strength buried within your own very being, here and now. In fact, every goddess power is available to you. I'll read some of what she says goddess power is. Goddess power is divinely sourced from within, not obtained from the world externally. Self-existing, not created unnaturally. Self-celebrating rather than self-effacing. Self-validating rather than externally validated. Infinite and grows with expression, not in limited supply. Bold rather than fearful. Equal rather than superior or inferior. Self-aware rather than self-conscious. Vulnerable rather than defensive. Sharing rather than hoarding. Creative rather than copying. Generating flow rather than struggling. Peaceful rather than worrying. Flexible rather than rigid. Abundant rather than scarce. Unifying rather than divisive. Adorned rather than garish. Critiquing rather than criticizing. Direct rather than harsh. Enjoying wellness rather than illness. Joyful rather than sorrowful. Roaring rather than meowing. In the chapters to come, you will meet the supreme Hindu Vedic goddess Shakti and her chief goddess manifestations. So I want you to make sure you understand that the goddess energy, the supreme energy, Shakti. And you know, if you do study yoga, you'll know that they talk about Shakti and Shiva. Shakti is the energy at the very base of your spine. There is so much that is about getting that Shakti energy, that Kundalini energy to start to rise within our body, within the inner channels. That Shakti energy is within you. And her three chief goddess manifestations are Durga, the goddess of power and self-determination. Lakshmi, the goddess of abundance and inner contentment. And Saraswati, the goddess of wisdom, peace, and self-actualization. And then she also says, in addition to sharing timeless goddess mythology, I also share a revolutionary revisioning of the divine feminine, bringing the archetype, personality, and behavioral traits of these three goddesses into a modern context, which I hope will help you discover these traits within yourself and lead an emotionally liberated life in the here and now. To give you a little bit more understanding of the goddesses, Durga models how to embody courage in the face of challenges and how to enjoy healthy goddess-like rage when that rage is necessary to discover our true voice. Lakshmi teaches us how to love ourselves, value ourselves, and be ourselves. Saraswati demonstrates the way to finding lasting peace within by expressing our goddess roar at last. Their stories and their teachings will help you free yourself from the invisible prisons of patriarchal control and begin leading a more empowered, abundant, and enlightened life with an enhanced ability to love yourself, champion yourself, and reach the goals you set for yourself, undeterred by internalized misogyny or institutionalized patriarchy. It's true that strides have been made in gender equality, and it's important to acknowledge and celebrate those advances. But as a society and a culture, we still have a long way to go. Okay, so let me move to this next part that I wanted to share with you on Saraswati specifically. I could read this whole book to you, my friends. I love being in the goddess energy so, so much. Okay. So one of the things you'll find in this book is, the mythology with Durga and with some of these beings, that Durga's energy helps to destroy what's called the Asuras. Asuras are, so the Devas and the Asuras, and I'm praying that I'm pronouncing that right. I'm pretty sure that that's how you pronounce it. There are the forces of light and darkness. So not only things that we see outside, but within our mind too. And so she goes on to say that this is goddess reclamation work. Now, for me, I'm in the third area, which says, Saraswati says, wake up and face your trauma. I thought this was so brilliant. I wanted to share this with you. The goddess reclamation work, rejecting who we are told we are by the patriarchal asuras in our life, that's the forces of darkness, must be an ongoing contemplation until we reclaim our authentic voice and no longer react from flight, fight, or freeze impulses. As goddess women, we must restore Dharma in our hearts and the world. Remember, we have the Devas and the Asuras, forces of light and darkness in our minds too. All women have shadows, dreadful encounters. These shadows emerge from our encounters with patriarchy. We try to forget about our shadows and pretend we live in light, but darkness lurks in our buried memories. How can any woman possibly experience goddess-like wholeness when she must push away disturbing memories of harm done to her, mocking her, diminishing her? No wonder most women, even the most outwardly confident ones, are unexpectedly diffident at times. Even when I walked away from my first marriage, a deep subconscious self-loathing set into me for failing, for taking my infant son away from his father. This self-hatred is trauma. And I want you to underline that, my friend. This self-hatred is trauma. Sometimes we must go back and heal the residue of trauma. As years passed, I chose another partner for myself, this time a more evolved soul, and I cut off any memory of that illogically and unnecessarily shamed, vulnerable, and abandoned young woman who was backed up against a wall of patriarchy. By then, the damage had been done. I was split into parts of me that I liked and parts I did not like, those that my subjugators had blamed and shamed. Thank goodness my teacher, who she calls Baba, that's her grandfather, had told me something special about Saraswati. He had given me wisdom to see and bring light to all my shadows when I was ready. Baba told me that the goddess Saraswati not only lives in cosmic realms, but she also manifests as a life-giving river. He pointed out something significant. To those who, and this is a quote, to those who possess inner eyes, this river is flowing inside your own awareness, a river of light. When you are ready to venture into your hidden heart and beyond the form, you will find Saraswati's light within, flowing like a torrential, enlightened current. When you descend into Saraswati's flow, everything will become wet with awareness, love, and light inside you. I never forgot those words, even decades later. I kept thinking about how a river flows. There is something immensely okay and wonderful about this forward, ever onward flow. A grand river that moves forward with goddess momentum will never leave behind even a cup of herself. Despite unwanted things, the shadows entering her waters, she carries all of herself, every drop of herself closely held to her heart, eagerly rushing along to meet the ocean. Finding rest at last in the ocean is her spiritual goal. The ocean represents becoming endless and boundless in her own fullness. One morning after my meditation, I thought, if I truly want to flow like Saraswati, then I too must accept everything about me. I decided to practice radical self-acceptance toward my so-called failed parts, which I had banished from my awareness, then began my journey to love, to seriously love and bring to light all my disowned parts with all the thunder and passion of a goddess river. At long last, I opened the door to the banished parts of me. I welcomed the failed wife, the failed daughter-in-law, the failed mother of her infant son, to come out in the open from the basement of my consciousness and join me in my daily life. This story is so moving to me. I'm just going to read one more part to you. A much younger and inwardly broken woman with dark circles under her eyes came out trembling, squinting in the light. She had not seen light for decades, but now, every day, she smiles in my heart as she lies in the grass with her head on my lap, singing to herself songs about being a roaring goddess that we had heard from our mother. She knows that she is loved by me, the bigger me, the goddess me, no matter what. And when she does come out to be with me, in full transparency, she is joining me, the 55-year-old respected author, teacher, mother. My inner Saraswati flows again with a joyful ferocity, an unstoppable goddess force. There is no drop left behind, not even the cloudy and stained ones. All are divine, each single one of them. So listen up, patriarchs. And then there's a poem. Ah, Saraswati, who is this river? I did not meet her earlier. Oh, she is eternally new. In each pulse of time, she rushes forth to become what she was not a pulse ago. Her watery canvas boldly moves, ceaselessly bubbling, gushing forth through the will of her own, because this she knows for sure, I will never stop. The river has no fear. She need not capture her immensity in a standing pool of fear and ferocity. Because the river is all of herself, she has not left even a drop behind. And in that wholeness, there is courage for the river to move, be, and become untold. Ever since I opened the door to all my memories and became misty in the torrential current of my inner Saraswati, I found myself filled with self-worth and self-love of a new kind, as if it were sparked with goddess magic and stardust. The journey from shadow to self, which incidentally is the name I gave to my podcast, is not just a journey we do occasionally, but a journey we must do all the time if we want to flow in our lives like Saraswati does as a goddess river, full throttle. Even when you've overcome your default way of living in the shadow to living more in the light, our human mind, made susceptible by countless millennia of battling patriarchy, is always being seduced to go into the more shadowy, non-goddess-like aspect of itself, into the lostness, the self-abandonment, the bewilderment. But as you read, you can breathe. You can exhale. You can go sit in the garden of your own life and picnic with all the shadowy parts of yourself that you had once banished from your day-to-day reality. Then, as your dark, light, and gray personas, past and present, merge into one integrated whole, no one can stop you from flowing forward like I am flowing too, with Saraswati showing the way. Don't lose hope. Oh, my friend, as I said, I could read this whole book to you. Everything that I've read on these pages rings with the truth of millennia. It rings with the truth of the Vedas. And if you're not familiar with the Vedas, one of the things that Acharya Shunya has taught me is that what's so unique about them is that they're, first of all, they're for everyone. They're not just for a particular culture or a particular continent. And it's the only scripture that I've ever come across that has both male and female contributors. The rishis, the enlightened spiritual men, and the rishikas, also the enlightened women, both contributing, teaching us how to be fully divine and fully human at the same time. Acharya Shunya comes from this lineage, a 2,000-year lineage in her family. She's born into this lineage, the first female lineage holder. But you can feel the power of not only her teacher, Baba, who's her grandfather, and his teacher, who's her great-grandfather, all the teachers, and the truth of living as a human being and accepting yourself and embodying the light, embodying your goddess energy. So I hope that you've enjoyed this sneak peek into this book. I highly, highly recommend, if you can order it, get yourself a copy. If you're hearing this before September 6th of 2022, go ahead and please pre-order the book so you get it on the day it comes out. And if you're listening to it after, wherever you go and order your books or get your books, bookstores, wherever it might be, do yourself a favor. Whether you're a man, woman, or however you identify, this book will help you to reclaim and restore the divine feminine energy within you, not somewhere far away, but your own true self. And for me, my friend, that is a miracle. That is a miracle. This book will definitely help you to magnify your miracles, for sure. Please tune in next week, my friend, when you're going to get a chance to be in the presence and the energy of Acharya Shunya on this podcast. I'm so excited. Can't wait to introduce her to you. But until then, remember that the key to magnifying your miracles is to know that your miracle is already here. If you know anyone who would enjoy this podcast, please feel free to pass it on. And know from the bottom of my heart, my friends, I love you so much. God bless you. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to the Magnify Your Miracles podcast. I'm so grateful to be able to spend this time with you. If you want even more inspiration, feel free to visit my website, francisfaden.com or magnifyyourmiracles.com. And if you did enjoy this episode, I would really appreciate it if you left a review on iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever it is that you connect with awesome podcasts. Remember, the key to magnifying your miracles is remembering that your miracle is already here.